Thank you, Camille, and you're back at you. You're one of the most wonderful and brilliant people I know as well, and it's always a pleasure to work with you because you are such a badass. Everything you do so well. I have long admired you and enjoy working with you, so it's a pleasure we can work together. So today's topic is integrating yourself into the working world. I'll tell you what we're going to talk about in just a moment, but as long as we're on the topic of integrating yourself into the world, I'd like to offer condolences and just a word about yesterday's tragedy in Spain. It's a deeply painful and troubling shame that there are people out there who can't integrate themselves into the world. I mean, how hard is it? Like, look how much fun we have being from different countries and from different backgrounds, and integrating ourselves is one of the joys of life. I mean, isn't it? Isn't that the best? It's well established that societies that are integrated, societies that treat women well, it's well established. History tells us those kinds of societies thrive and prosper. So why wouldn't you want to do that? Like, why would you want to say, no, let's just be like one pure race and let's keep women suppressed? That's an idiotic move. That's an objective truth. It can be shown. So what's going on? I hope it's your world now. You young folks, it's your time, and I do hope you embrace the process of integration and exhibit what's so good about it by enjoying it. That's what we should all do. We just have to live by example, I suppose. So that's my editorial comment. And that yesterday was really, really sad, and we're grieving for those folks. So we're going to talk about integrating yourself into the working world. I have one correction to Camille's introduction. I got a promotion, so I'm not an associate professor. I'm a professor now.
Yeah.
So which is good. Berkeley brings us right up there. It's a good place to be. So what we're going to talk about is how to go from student into the working world and how to make a contribution and how you should think about doing that. This time in your life when you're making that transition is a time when you're going to go from being on input. You've been on input your whole lives. Ever since you were a little kid, people were teaching you. You were just this organism, this system that was on input, and you were getting input from the outside world, information and observations. And it's your time, for some of you it might be past time, to turn around and start being on output. You got to make a contribution to this world, and you're going to be on output for the rest of your lives. You'll still be learning, but you have to give now. You have to give your work, and the reason you're in college, the reason you're here, is ostensibly because what you'd like to do is give something that is unique, that is uniquely you. You want to step out into the world and have someone hand you money in exchange for being yourself. What a really nice way to live. And that's the distinction, yes, that's the distinction between having a job and having a career. Having a job means they give you money to perform a given task. All good. Some of the world's great people have jobs, and we need people to do jobs. You're getting paid to perform a certain task. But a career means you're being paid to think. A career is riskier. There is less job security. It's for people who have an appetite for risk. But if you want to be a careerist, if you want to have a career and be paid for your unique and original thoughts, you're going to have to be extremely patient. You're going to have to literally earn a seat at the table, and you're going to have to do a lot of work and prove yourself before someone will hand you that opportunity. So we'll talk about that a little bit. I'll give you a brief balloon ride over my background and what my area of expertise is. I started when I was 21 years old in Hollywood, California. My early career was as an audio technician. There are very, very few, then and now, very few women as engineers and record producers. You could really count them on maybe two hands. Audio technicians, women, you could count them on one hand. someone did a poll once, and I think there were 4 of us around the world. It's very, very rare. But I wanted to be where records were being made, so I studied on my own. I'm an autodidact. I studied electronics and studio systems and recording techniques. I worked for a company called Audio Industries Corporation in Hollywood. I worked for band Crosby, Stills and Nash, whom your grandparents would know very well. I was their studio tech, and then in 1983 I got my dream job. I got to go to work for my favorite artist in the world, and that was Prince. He was just coming off the 1999 tour. So I joined Prince for the Purple Rain album. I was with him for over 4 years. I worked on he put me in the role of engineer, so I transitioned from technician to engineer, and I worked on Purple Rain, Around the World in a Day, the Parade album, and Sign of the Times, and the Black album. So I was his employee for the most fertile period in his life. After Prince, I came back to Los Angeles and worked as an engineer. I also worked as a mixer, and I worked as a record producer up until 2000. I had a hit record with Bare Naked Ladies in 1998, and when you had a hit record back in those days, if you had a hit record as a producer, you were a royalty participant and you got a big paycheck. And then 6 months later, you got another big one. So with that money, pre-Napster, you could pay off your mortgage, or you could build a home studio, or do any number of things. And I opted to have a second career. I thought I would enjoy the work of a scientist, and I do enjoy it. So I entered college as a freshman, got a dual degree in psychology and neuroscience, got my Ph.D. at McGill in Montreal, and what I do now, in addition to teaching these topics here at Berkeley, is I study auditory neuroscience. I'm interested in how musical training shapes the auditory neural pathway, and it's a whole long talk, and it's lots of fun, but I'm interested in musicians and hearing and things like that. So I have expertise in a number of different areas, and that's why I think it's easy for me to talk with you about integrating yourself into a system. So let's get right to it. You are hoping to be part of a conversation that's already ongoing. Regardless of what you hope to do in your life, you might want to be a professor or a teacher, you might want to be a record producer, you might want to be a studio owner, might want to be a touring musician, but you're saying, let me contribute to this conversation. You want to get behind the velvet rope and into a room where this conversation has been going on for a long time. Don't make the rookie mistake of walking into that room and blasting your horn. You won't fit in. In fact, you'll be kind of shunned. Like all beginners, you have to walk into this room and first listen to the conversation. Observe these kinds of conversations that are going on. And I'm speaking metaphorically as well as literally. How are others doing it? Any problem that you want to solve in the arts has already been solved by someone who came before you. Listen to them. Find role models. Find role models out there in the world. Read whatever interviews you can find with them, listen to or watch any videos with them on the internet. They'll tell you how they got to the top of that mountain that you hope to climb. They'll tell you how they got there. People like to talk about themselves. Listen to what they say and walk in their footsteps rather than trying to reinvent the wheel. As producer extraordinaire Fernando Garibay out in Los Angeles works with Lady Gaga. He's like 34 years old and he's got loads of Grammys and big success. He tells his songwriting students, he tells them, don't reinvent the wheel, reinvent the car. Wheel's already been invented. Make a new car with it. So some of these things that you're hoping to do, don't think that you're starting from scratch. Other people have done it. Find the role models who've done it the way you'd like to and walk in their footsteps. I don't know how it works. I'll try some different buttons.
The one to the right.
Oh, there it goes. So what you have to do is, essentially, the theme running through this talk is going to be know yourself. Your future, the seeds of your future, have been inside you since you were little. Grow that tree. A career is not something that you look for out there in the world. It's not something that you go out into the world to find, like fruit hanging off a tree. You don't just go up there and go, oh, that looks good, I'll go and be that. I've had students here at Berkeley, when I've asked them, naive students, there was one recently, I asked her, well, whose career would you like to have? And she said, Adele's. Yeah, who wouldn't? It's like, who wouldn't want to be the biggest pop star in the world? And then you ask her, well, what steps are you taking toward that? Do you sing? Well, I sing a little bit in the shower. Oh, come on. That's a little bit of magical thinking, right? You don't go out and choose a career from the outside world. Your career is already growing inside you. You grow that. So some people think about the future and they have different sorts of concepts about it. Some people think that the future is fate and that they have no control over it and that it's all predetermined. Some people think it's just random chance, so it's luck. Not predetermined necessarily, but if you miss the boat, you're not going to have a successful career. And some people think that it's entirely predictable, that it's cause and effect. Well, it's in truth, it's probably a mixture of all three. Now, the predeterminism means your genes, who you are. If you're not really, really tall and athletic with quick reflexes, you're not going to be a professional basketball player. So there's some fate involved. If you, well, I won't even get into neuroscience, but there is some fate even when it comes to our talents as engineers or as studio owners or just whatever. Is it luck? Yeah, luck is always involved. Daniel Kahneman, who wrote Thinking Fast and Slow, talks about that. Luck is always a factor. Is it cause and effect? Is it predictable? To a large extent, yes. So success happens when preparation meets opportunity. The window of opportunity in this business opens unexpectedly. When you least expect it, the window of opportunity can open. And remember that the window of opportunity slams shut just as capriciously and as unexpectedly as it opens. As you're going through your life, constantly be getting more and more and more prepared. Because when that opportunity presents itself, you want to jump through that window. A quick tip, don't jump through the window if it's a detour. If it seems like a great opportunity, but it would take you off your path and toward a different kind of career, don't do it. It's a red herring, it's a mistake. But when that opportunity opens and it will let you into a new life that is on the path where you were going anyway, the conventional wisdom from experts is just take it. When I got my job with Prince, it was scary as hell. I was 26 years old. I had been in the business for 5 years, but I was being asked to move 2,300 miles away from everyone I'd ever known. So to move to Minnesota, I would have no friends, no family, nobody there, and I'd be all alone. I'd be in Minneapolis, so if a tape machine breaks down at 3 o'clock in the morning and we're recording, oh, I don't know, Purple Rain, there's no other technician I can call. It's on me. If the console breaks down, if his mic breaks down, who am I going to call? It's on me. I'm 26 years old. Am I taking this job? Oh, hell yeah, I'm taking this job. Of course I'm taking this goddamn job because it's really scary, but you've got to be crazy enough to go, yeah, but I can do it. And you have to be sane enough to actually do it. I took all my books with me and I studied like a fiend and I worked my ass off to make sure I could do it. Those two qualities are important. People who are too crazy can't keep it together and can't have success because they're just a little too crazy. People who are too sober and sane won't have the guts to jump through the window of opportunity. So bear that in mind. Know yourself, the theme of this talk. Whatever you can do the most easily is something that you can sustain and do for the longest. So by that I mean, what kind of thinker are you? Are you an artist? Are you a visionary? An artist is someone who's always seeing new patterns and thinking of things that haven't been thought of before. Artists' heads are typically in the clouds. This information comes to us from a great fellow from Silicon Valley, the man named Bill Verplank, and he draws a schematic of knowing yourself. And he talks about how artists, songwriters, writers, people like Steve Jobs, that's who he knew and worked with, their heads are in the clouds and they're thinking of new ideas all the time. Are you that kind of thinker? Good for you. But your problem, if you're a visionary and a thinker, is that you need to get something made. It's one thing to write songs, but it's another thing altogether to record an album. It's one thing to think of a brand new idea for a phone or a personal computer. It's another thing altogether to build a prototype. To build the prototype, to get something made, we need a different archetype. The engineer. Are you an engineer? It doesn't mean recording engineer. It means, are you someone who builds things, who makes things happen? If you're a builder, whether you build a recording studio or you build a college, or if you're like Camille maybe and you build a program, you're a builder. You create things. You make them happen. You take someone's idea. Maybe Roger Brown will say, Camille, make this happen. And Camille makes it happen. I'm an engineer too. I'm cut from the same cloth. I can work with great artists who come to me with these ideas. I'm not a songwriter. I'm not a musician myself, but I'm really good at getting things done. I can make things happen. I can build them. But now we've got a problem. We've just created something. Oh no, how do we sell it? We need another archetype. To sell something, artists typically, if any of you are artists, you may be inclined to say, I'm terrible at business. Artists, the concept of money can be kind of abstract. Engineers are a little bit too practical and they think money should be obvious, and it isn't. There's another archetype, and that's the entrepreneur, the salesman, the person who may not understand how to build things, with circuits and stuff or with programs, may not invent things, but is really good at understanding people. The entrepreneur can get things sold. In New Jersey, and they promoted him very quickly. And I asked him why they promoted him very quickly, and he said, because I wasn't afraid to clean behind the toilets, unlike the other interns. Alex researched House of Loud because they made the kind of records that he wanted to make. He wanted to learn from those guys, and they loved him. They pulled him up through the ranks very fast, and Dan Korneff took him on as his personal assistant, took him under his wing, taught him everything he needed to know, and Alex is doing very well in Los Angeles. General advice, again, follow up with people you've met. Matt Champlin told us something. Matt said that and I'm glad he said this because I've been telling my students this for the longest time, and I hope they listen to me. Don't just email a resume and say, can I please work with you? They get those every day. What Matt did is he printed out his resume and went to the studio. First he called them and he said, can I come by and drop off a resume? Record Plant was one example. He really wanted to work at Record Plant in LA, and they said, no, we don't accept any resumes. We got enough. We got drawers full of them. No. And 10 minutes later, Matt rang their doorbell, and he said, hey, I just called you 10 minutes ago. I was in the neighborhood, so can I just add this to your file? And the guy called him back a week later and said, hey, man, remember when you came by and you dropped off your resume? I was really impressed with you that you actually took the time to actually come to the door and ring the bell. How'd you like to come in for an interview? And he got the gig. He got the job. I've been telling students this for the longest time. You have to show them that you're willing to put in the effort. And that's what I'd do if I were you. I'd go there and I'd stand there at the window and I'd say, let's say I'm at Sunset Sound, can I have a meeting with Craig Hubler? Because I've researched his name, the studio manager. I'd really like to work here. I know your history. I love the records that are made out of here, the sound that comes out of here. This is the thing I want to learn. Can I drop this off? In person. What to wear to these kinds of drop-offs? Wear the thing you would wear on the job. Don't go in overly dressed, because you'll look naive. You'll look like this kid doesn't know what time it is. And don't be underdressed. If it's 104 degrees outside, don't go in flip-flops and a tank top and little hoochie mama shorts. Don't do that. The way you want them to see you as someone they could put on the job right now, so that they can picture you working. Dress as you would work. And that will help them. You want that. You want to give the impression that I'm work ready. You could plug me in right now. So here's what I'd do during the daytime. If I were you, I'd drop off my resume at businesses where my skills might be of use. This is a service-oriented profession. Where can you be of use? How can you help What can you do? Get contact info for managers and include personally addressed cover level letters. How cool would it be if Craig Hubler had a resume from you, but he also had a letter that says, "Dear Mr. Hubler, I've heard about your studio from Susan Rogers. I've heard, really, personal. My dream is to work at Sunset Sound. I do this, this, and this. I know you get tons. Show empathy. I know you get tons of these. This is just one more, but I hope I can convince you of my sincerity and my commitment to doing whatever needs doing for as long as you need me to do it. That's how badly I want this." And think about it from their perspective, and then they'll think to themselves, he gets me. This person really gets me, even if you don't. So say something in the cover letter about the history of the company or why you chose to apply with them. And of course this applies as well if you're going to Snapchat or Google or wherever you're going. Find Berkeley alumni for advice and companionship. The people who've been out a few years in front of you have made the mistakes and run into the problems that you're going to make and run into. Ask them about them. Ask your Berkeley professors for contact info. You'd be surprised some of the people that some of us know. Follow up with people you've met every so often. One of my students got a really good opportunity because once a week he'd call and say, "Hey, I was just there last week, just checking in. Any openings?" "Okay, well, I'll just call back." "Hey, that was me, I just called last week. Any openings yet?" And they admire that kind of moxie. It shows you mean it. You're not just speaking empty words, you want it. Read the local weekly newspaper. This cannot be overemphasized. You'll need to be part of, going back to the beginning, a conversation that's already in progress. That conversation is happening in the LA Weekly. It's happening in the Village Voice. It's happening in Dig Boston. Find the weekly newspaper that represents that city, so you'll know that city's value system. You'll also know where the good clubs are. You'll know where the restaurants are, where everybody goes. You'll need to be part of this conversation and eavesdrop on it, so you need to be where that conversation is taking place. Those free weekly entertainment journals will tell you about that. And listen to the local college radio station that plays the hippest local music. If you're in LA and you listen to KCRW, that's going to be a different playlist than KVRX in Austin, KFUV and WNYU in New York, and in Boston, for example. These college radio stations reflect our value system, the city's value system. You'll know what kind of music people like by listening to them. And what I'd do in the nighttime, I'd set up a home studio if I were going to be an industry professional making records. I'd visit the clubs where the cutting edge artists play. This is what Matt Champlin said as well. This is what he did at night when he first moved to Los Angeles after graduating. He went to the clubs and you check out who the artists are and who's moving up really quickly through the ranks. Think back to leadership lessons from Dancing Guy. Find a lone nut doing something great. My life and career changed for the better when I heard a cassette tape by two lone nuts, Tommy Jordan and Greg Kirsten, the band Gegita. The year was 1991. I was in Kevin Laffey's office at Warner Brothers, and he said, "I got this thing to play for you. This band is really interesting. You won't be interested in it because they don't have any money to pay someone like you, but just check it out anyway." And he played a cassette, and I heard something in their music. And I said to him, "On the contrary, I'd like very much to meet with these guys. I just heard that they knew something about music that I didn't know and that I needed and wanted to know badly." They put me in touch with Tommy and Greg. I did 3 records with them. Fast forward 20 years later, Greg just took home 4 Grammys this year. Producer of the Year, Album of the Year, Record of the Year, and Song of the Year for Adele. He's the writer of Hello and half the songs on that album and the producer, and he got Producer of the Year. It's his 3rd time nominated, but this time he finally won because I don't think Max Martin had a record up for it this year. Anyway, be the first follower, as I was with them, and to hear talent. Know it when you hear it. I was into Prince when his first record dropped. So be the kind of person who goes out there, whether it's artists you want to work with or companies that you want to work with, technology companies, and know what good is so that you can be part of it. You don't want that train to pass you by. You want that train to meet you when you're standing there with your thumb out on the tracks. Let it pick you up, but you have to know where to stand. So go out, and Matt Champlin did the same thing. And you'll have business cards, and you'll go up to bands if you want to be a record producer. You'll say, this is me, I really like the work you do, I'd love to work with you. If you need an engineer, if you need a producer, if you need a mixer, this is me, get in touch with me. Know the neighborhood around the major studios and the labels, eat in their lunch cafes, have a drink in their bars during happy hour. I did that early in my career in Hollywood. You just listen for those conversations and you see where people go. So you can fit in, so you can be one of them. Find local rehearsal studios, stock the hallways or the parking lots. A lot of work happens, a lot of business deals are made in the parking lots of rehearsal studios. I can say that from experience. If you're going to Los Angeles, there's a company called Bedrock. Some young guys formed this big facility in Echo Park, rehearsal studio, and they've added a music store and recording studios. It's kind of an all-in-one, a one-stop shop. If you're going to LA, check out Bedrock in Echo Park. Become a fan of a few local artists and persuade them to work with you. And do please continue working with your previous Berklee clients to finish and market your projects. As I said, you all are the music business. Team up with one another and make your careers together. So last but first, study, for heaven's sakes, study. Your school life is not over. Your studying is not over. Listen to, buy, and discuss current music. Read music reviews and artist interviews. Study audio electronics, digital signal processing, sound design and programming, editing techniques, whatever serves your technical needs. If you want to be an entrepreneur, you'll need to know how to use the latest tools that are used in that business. Read your trade journal, whatever it is, and practice every day, whether it's performing, writing, mixing, designing. No day without a line. Practice every day. And that's all I've got to say for you, so thank you. Yes.
In this moment in your life, what are your dreams?
Oh, I've got a lot. many. I like being a teacher, but I've got my auditory research lab here. So my dream is to complete my research projects and get it published, to reduce my teaching load just a little bit so I've got more time for research. That might be a futile dream, but I'm going to keep working toward it. So to keep turning young people out into the world who are better producers or perhaps even auditory scientists. I want to finish that up at Berklee, maybe another 8 years or so. I'm 61 now, so I don't want to be here when I'm an old gargoyle. I want to retire when I'm proper age, and then I want to do the work that I have wanted desperately to do for a long time. I want to work with animals. I just want to continue my science work and my studying, and I want to look at pigs. Pigs are the only smart animal that we don't study for their brain. We use them for meat. And I'm interested in cognition in other species. So I want to go to some place where I've got a little bit of land and a barn, and I can have some pigs, and I'm going to have an all-pig orchestra.
Yeah.
So yeah, I've got all kinds of plans. I know myself really well. I know what I like. I know what's fun for me. I know what I want to do. And so I walk toward what I hope to do. You don't get everything you want, but I've always managed to get pretty damn close. And I've done actually more than I ever thought was possible. Thanks for asking. Other questions? Oh, yes?
You said something about when an opportunity opens, to take it only if it's on the right path of what you eventually want to be doing. But then you made such a drastic career change in your life. How did you know that when you took the step to go back to school that it wasn't going to lead you on a different path since it was so rapid?
You know, it's that instincts. It's, like I said, the future's a big place and it's foggy. But as you get close to something that you love, you know it. Again, let's think of dating as an analogy. You just know it. When you meet someone who's right for you, there's just a kind of knowing. And my fantasies, my daydreams started to change when I was in my 40s. And for the first time in my life, I was no longer thinking about or fantasizing about college radio music, the music I was working on. That had never happened to me before. Instead, I started fantasizing about pigs and other consciousness. What is consciousness? How does it emerge? What's the neural infrastructure of consciousness? Learning and things like that. I began fantasizing about that. So I put myself where I was likely to encounter opportunities to let me go deeper into that. It just so happened that that thinking coincided with a time in my life where I was hitting my peak as a record maker, so I was able to have a hit record. That hit record gave me the money that I could go find and open for myself the window of opportunity. I didn't need anyone to open it for me. Once I got this little windfall, I could open it for myself. So I wouldn't have been able to do that if I hadn't known what I was looking for out there in the fog, but I had a good sense of it. It might change throughout your lifetime. Sometimes, and this is a good quote, again from the very quotable Tim Bruckner, he said, sometimes we don't get the dream we want. Sometimes we get the dream we didn't know we had. Tim is an artist and a sculptor, but when I met him, he was signed to Casablanca Records. He, in addition to being a painter and a sculptor who did album cover art, he was also a musician. And he had a demo deal, and he had a kind of minor success. And then he met a woman literally of his dreams. He had a dream about her the night before. He dreamt about a blonde woman on a white horse. And the next day he met a blonde woman who had a white horse. And they fell in love. He proposed on their first date. He proposed. She said no. They went out the next night. He proposed again, and she said yes. And they've been married for 35 years. One of the happiest marriages I know. He didn't get the dream he wanted. He got a different dream. And he didn't see that coming, and he's happy, and he's successful, and he got the dream he didn't even imagine. So be thinking of that as well. That can happen to you. I urged you to think about what success looks like, but be open to surprises. My life sure as hell surprised me happily. I got more than I ever dreamed of, and sometimes that'll happen to you. Yes, you had a question.
Yeah, I just had a question about. Well, thank you very much for the presentation. I thought it was awesome, especially the dancing guy. That was great. So
That's pretty good.
yeah. Just you were talking about the different archetypes, the what is it? The thinker, the builder, seller, and competitor is basically what you were talking about, right? So as an artist moving forward, I feel like particularly now, with the industry as it is and various tools for self promotion and like self release that a lot of artists are doing now, which we have the capability of. Wouldn't you say that I would need to fall within at least a little bit of those four categories?
Not necessarily, no. In fact, as Bill Verplank taught us, if you're all four of those, think of them as four quadrants. This is what he drew on the board. The artist is at the quadrant, so a line this way and a line bisecting it that way. Artist at the top. He puts the engineer over on one side, the entrepreneur on another side, the bully, he calls him, the competitor, pardon me, down at the bottom. If, pardon me, all of you are you yourself are right smack in the middle of that quadrant, you won't be as successful as if you build a team with a great visionary like Steve Jobs. Pardon me. Just lost my voice. A great engineer like Steve Wozniak. And then other archetypes who are great salespeople and who are great competitors. If you're on the extremes of those four quadrants, of those 4 points, you will have a better chance of success than if you're trying to be all things to all people in the middle. So what the actual point of that lecture is to build your artistic team with people who are not like you. Thank you so much. I made a mistake of Bare Naked Ladies had people who were great in all 4 categories. Gegita did not. Gegita built a team with great visionaries. I was a good engineer. They had David Byrne, who was the president of their label, as a good entrepreneur, but they were afraid to bring a bully onto their team. They sold several orders of magnitude fewer records than Bare Naked Ladies. So don't try to be all things.
But I mean, so just initially when building a brand, or if you're just one individual at the beginning,
Right.
So I mean, would you say it's beneficial then to just focus on one of those aspects?
I think so.
And then, so say you're a builder, so you
Yes.
build a brand.
Yes.
I mean, you have to also have thought of that idea. So maybe you've built a brand from an idea that you've had, right?
Yes.
Then I mean, do you focus all your attention and energy on just building that product, or do you at least put a little bit of the energy into selling it and also sort of competing in the market to find the different people that have those qualities?
I think you're handicapping yourself if you're trying to think trying to cover all four bases.
Sure.
I think what you do is, if you've gotten to the stage where you've built something that is a product of your ideas, ask yourself in all seriousness what's best about it. The actual building of it or the idea itself? What contribution are you making that is the greatest? If what you're making is, if you have better ideas than execution, be the idea guy and partner up with people who are good at executing ideas. And if you're actually better at execution than ideas, partner up with a visionary. And collectively, your chances for success will be greater. The reason I worked well with Prince is I didn't compete with Prince. He brought the ideas to the table, I brought the hands.
Yeah.
With Gay Guitar, we were successful because they brought the ideas, I brought the hands. Same thing with Bare Naked Ladies, and same thing with Apple Computer and with Google, Bill Verplank's example. If Steve Jobs had tried to do it all himself, he would have failed. He needed Steve Wozniak, and Bill Gates needed Paul, whatever his name is. They need their partners. Recognize what you bring that is great, what's great about you, and then go to other people to build a team to help you complete projects in a way that you're being your best, they're being their best, and collectively you're going to really stand a realistic chance of competing out there in the marketplace. People who try and do it all themselves fail. Just watched a documentary the other night on Bob Marley. Now, some of us, like Prince was an artist. Prince was a competitor, a fierce competitor. Michael Jackson was an artist and a fierce competitor. Bob Marley, artist, fiercely competitive. When Bob Marley, it says in this documentary, he had like 11 different kids, but when he was, of course, the kids were all different. 11 different children, not 11 of the same children. They'd be out on the beach and they'd be running with Dad. You know, your little kid, you run with Dad. When Dad would say, "Come on, kids, let's race," he would run as fast as he could. So he'd win every time. That's how competitive he was. So you can be more than one thing, and he was a great visionary. Bob Marley is reggae music. But do flesh out your team with people who handle those aspects of your work that you don't do naturally and well.
Yeah.
Give it to others, like with First Follower. We saw how a movement happened. Now, it's important to be doing something that invites others to follow. If Dancing Guy had been doing like some ballet or some, contemporary dance or some military march, it wouldn't have been appropriate and no one would have followed him. Sometimes musicians are performing a certain kind of music that is, we politely say that it's ahead of its time. Sometimes it's just plain bad. There was an article this month's Atlantic magazine about prog rock, the whitest music ever made and also possibly the most awful, is what it's trying to say. Terrible. Prog rock didn't really catch on because it was bad. It was well executed, but it's not good. No one liked it. No repetitions, no melodic hooks. Lyrics like "mountains come out of the sky and they stand there." Yeah, mountains stand there. Yeah, we got you. The rest of us love the Ramones. The Ramones. Sheena is a punk rocker. We prefer that. So whatever it is you're doing, your team will help you understand what's good about it, what's bad about it, and work with people who help you sell a great idea, not necessarily a bad one. Other questions? Yes.
First of all, thank you so much for sharing with us. You mentioned about don't reinvent the wheel, reinvent the car. Do you have any advice? Because it's hard to reinvent the entire car at once. Any advice on compartmentalizing sort of each piece of the car at a time?
Well, Fernando Garabay's point there was to take things that are already invented, such as wheels and axles and everything, and assemble it in a new and creative way. His focus is in particular on melody. He focuses on melody and harmony. What he is teaching his songwriting proteges to do is to craft melodic hooks. So to him, that's the part of the car that determines who's going to buy it. And that part may be analogous to the paint or the body type or the engine, the cubic centimeters or just whatever. But when you're building something, it's very important to understand who the buyer is. When you, let's use a different analogy. Let's say you want to open a restaurant. What kind of hamburger are you going to make? Do you want to sell lots of them? Do you want it to be fast and cheap? Are you going to be McDonald's? Are you going to be Burger King? That's one kind of hamburger. Is it going to be a little bit better quality? Are you going to sell like this is organic food and it's good quality. It's going to be good. Fast, not cheap, but better caliber. Or are you going to sell the kind of hamburger that people go to Capitol Grill to have, where it's some special fries and with art and paintings on the wall, and you get a glass of wine or a beer with it? What kind of hamburger are you going to sell? You decide that by understanding your audience. Who do you want to have buying your hamburgers and where? Where do you want to put your emphasis? So when you're building a car, is it going to be a cheap car? Is it going to be an expensive car? Is it going to be a muscle car? Is it going to be a family wagon or whatever families buy? So do think about that, and different parts will matter depending on who your audience is. Music, the essential parts of music are the rhythm, melody and harmony, and the lyrics. Those are the three main components. They appeal to different listeners in different priorities. I myself have always been someone who's attracted to rhythm. The music that I love is funky and it's soulful and it has a deep pocket and it's got a groove. Music records that have that, I'm in. I don't need the lyrics to be brilliant, and frankly, I don't need as many hooks or whatever. People who are into the Beatles, from my generation anyway, are into melody and harmony. And people who are into Lady Gaga, likewise. I saw a little 3-year-old in a pizza parlor dancing to Bad Romance, I think it's called. That baby was just grooving hard. That's a great little hook. Fernando Garibay knows what he's doing in writing melody. But other people who like Bob Dylan and folks like that, or maybe even Bob Marley, are interested in the lyrical message. All of those activate different pathways of our nervous system. You'll have to understand in the product you're making, who's your buyer and what are they buying? Are they buying words, melody, harmony? Are they buying the groove? Maximize that for that audience and let the other audience, let them go. James Brown could write, "Hot pants gives you confidence." He's not going to attract Bob Dylan's audience. And George Clinton can go, and I'm buying my ticket to that show as soon as they come into town, because that is funky. My Beatles-loving friends don't get it. Let them go. Sell to your audience. Match your product to your audience and know what they like about it. Don't try to please everyone. That's another 5-year-old folly. Other questions? Oh, yes. Both you guys.
So there's a really strong argument to be made for the money in the music industry shifting from records and traditional album sales to live touring acts, festivals popping up all around the world. I wonder if you can comment on your feelings about streaming and the future of that, where you might see that heading in 20 years, as well as, so on both sides, the record and the live.
I'm just an observer on the bench because I left the music business and stopped making records in 2000 when everything changed. So I'm just watching, and I'm a music buyer as well. I can't speak to where the technology is going because I don't know, and I can't speak to where the business is going because I don't know about that either. But I can speak to just common sense and human nature. People have always made music. People have always consumed it. Typically, popular music is consumed by young people who want to dance to it so that they can get together. Dance music is pop music, and that changes with technology and with the times. But in the big band era, popular music, Duke Ellington and Louis Armstrong and all that, they were doing big band, Count Basie, dance music. And the same thing in the 50s and the 60s and the 70s and so on. So young people will get together via music. That we know for sure. Because it's such a valuable product, some bully competitor out there is going to figure out a way to make sure that, 1, people pay for music, and 2, the people who are making it get paid. Because if the people who are making it don't get paid, they'll stop doing it. Well, they'll do it as a hobby, but their music won't get out there. We've got a real problem right now with how young people are interacting with one another. since the advent of the smartphone in 2007, young people spend more time alone than ever before, which is good for rates of teenage pregnancy and venereal diseases and stuff because they're not hooking up as much. But it's really, really bad for their psyches because they're lonely and they think that communicating electronically constitutes human interaction. The wise record maker would be well advised to make music that helps bring people together. It seems like that's going to be valuable. Probably it will probably be dance music. I only know what I know from observing human nature and history. As far as being on stage, you must bring some element of spectacle. You must be a larger than life character. The actor John Cusack said to me something really intriguing once. He said, all actors secretly want to be rock stars. All rock stars secretly want to be actors. The reason that an actor like himself, John Cusack, if you remember him from the 90s, he was big, 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 big. The reason John Cusack wants to be a rock star and hung out with the musicians I hung out with is when you're an actor, the gig, the job is to be anybody except yourself. You hide yourself. You play this character, that character, the other character. The job is to let no one see you. You make believe that you're someone else. Rock stars are completely the opposite. Rock stars, the job is to be a larger than life version of yourself. Lady Gaga recognized this when she was just Stephanie Germanotta and wearing little skirts and little t-shirts and she was just another girl with a piano. She was not very interesting. But as soon as she put on these 12-inch heels and wore a dress made out of meat, now there's something different. That's something that we look at and go, wow, she's interesting. Rihanna, I'm nothing like her. I enjoy fantasizing that I am like her when I watch her perform because I think, oh, wouldn't it be great to be like that? And Lana Del Rey, whom I love, or pick any artist that you revere. Prince recognized that. To be on stage, he had to be a larger-than-life version of himself. It was Prince, all right, the man I knew, but the man on stage lets you project that you're that bold, and you're that sexy, and you're that whatever it was he was doing on stage. So the live show is a critical component of music. When it is done well, the audience goes to a live show and they fantasize. And when they fantasize, they're fantasizing not about the artist, they're fantasizing about themselves. And that means they've taken that artist and they've integrated that artist into their own psyche. And that artist has become a part of them. I'm about to see Father John Misty. I just bought my ticket yesterday. I like Father John Misty. I know there's criticism of him, but I love him. And I can't wait to go see him. I'll never meet the guy. I don't care to. I don't want to. I like singing those songs in my head and pretending that I wrote them. Fantasy. Pretend, not really pretending, but you know what I'm saying. You're singing along those words. You go, oh, that's so clever. I wish I was clever like that. That's how music functions. And live music assists that function. Whoever does that really well, it rules the music business and will for the years to come. One more question, and we've got to turn it over. And you had a question, yes.
Yeah, you were describing how it's important to not embark on the wrong career. How do you draw the line between maybe taking an internship or a position at a company that's not, that you're not going to be doing the most exciting stuff, like, for example, customer service answering phone job at Isotope, the audio software company. How do you determine, like, which is not an exciting job that now might have a great career path, and then what's not that?
Don't think about exciting. Think about the exchange. Remember I said every conversation is a negotiation. Remember we talked about exchanging. What can they give you and what in exchange for what you give them, your time answering the phone. Take the position if it's going to give you something you need to get to your destination. If the job at Isotope will teach you valuable skills that you will then use and parlay, exchange for the next opportunity, take it. But if it's not going to give you anything that you need or will use to get to your destination, don't do it. It's the equivalent of starting to climb the wrong mountain or to climb going off to the side instead of up toward the top. Be thinking about where you're going, and as I said, don't try to get to the top in one step. It's a series of steps, but each step should add skills or knowledge or insight to you, to your quiver, arrows in your quiver, so that you'll have them. You don't need arrows to climb a mountain. Whatever it is you need to climb a mountain, it should add that, so that it gets you closer to where you want to be. That's what you're looking for. That's the main criterion. Excitement is just a bonus. I hope that answers the question. Well, thank you. I've got to turn it over to others, but thank you for your attention. I appreciate it.